is first we'd like to take maybe 10 minutes to give an introduction to the project team while we're all here. And kind of just introduce the opportunities and why we're excited about this project. And then we'd like to spend majority of this meeting in small breakout rooms, just talking with you folks, and kind of as a focused conversation, and talk about things like engagement and how we should best engage with you and your community and the folks you represent, accessibility and inclusion, what that means to you, what kind of challenges that you encounter when you enter a space like this, as well as educational opportunities. How do you best learn? Where have you seen projects like this performed well elsewhere? So we'll dive into that a lot more later, but a couple ground rules quickly. We're going to ask everyone, please stay muted. There may be some folks on this call who require closed captioning in order to follow along. So we just want to try and keep the background noise to a minimum, so keep the captioning clear. If you have a question, a comment, something you need repeated, by all means, raise your hand and we can call on you. And then also use the private chat function if you don't mind. If anyone is using a screen reader, anything that goes in the chat gets picked up by the screen reader. It could be kind of confusing while we're talking. So if you can send, if you have a question or comment, something you want to contribute, just send a private message to Aaron Tobin and we can take time to report out on those. And really, once we get into the breakout rooms, we can kind of play it by ear. And if we can have a more free-flowing conversation, that's great. But at least for the presentation piece, if people can just kind of follow along those rules, that'd be much appreciated. So just an introduction to the project and who we are. My name is Brandon Riley. I'm the Capital Projects Manager here at Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy. And what we want to introduce to you all today is our vision for this, what we're calling the sensory classroom. And really what we're trying to create here at the Frick Environmental Center is a series of spaces that offer different sensory experiences to try and teach users about the natural world, their natural environment, through the senses. And really we're gearing this classroom, as we're calling it, to users with exceptionalities, persons with disabilities, and making sure it's inclusive and accessible to everybody. And it's something that everyone can use. What we're kind of envisioning here, and this is high level conceptual, is an accessible route that winds its way through some of the woodland areas and meadow areas and kind of natural spaces at the Frick Environmental Center. And along that route, there's opportunities for discovery, learning, experiencing nature through smell, taste, touch. There's places to gather, there's places to observe. Really just a kind of a sensory experience that plays up and focuses on all the sensory inputs that are available here at the Frick Environmental Center and Frick Park in general. So some of the project goals that we want to outline here is one, again, learning through sensory experience. Whether that is learning about your senses, whether it is learning about how your senses interact with the world around you, with nature, with your environment, or learning about the environment and natural systems through the senses. The idea is for the senses to be the driver, the mechanism for how we create these learning opportunities in this space. And nature is intended to be the classroom. When we say sensory classroom, I think it's easy to get an image in your head of one centralized structured space similar to a school classroom where we're teaching about these things. That's not what we're going for. The idea is nature, everything around you is the classroom itself. And we're just trying to put you in tune with it, put users in tune with that. So they can take lessons that they might learn in this environment and take it elsewhere, wherever they go. Wherever they experience nature, these are lessons they can learn. These spaces we want to be designed with universal design for learning and inclusivity principles, meaning that these spaces should provide the ability for users to learn in however they learn. The best way that person learns, these spaces need to be flexible and accommodating for that. And to be fully inclusive as well, meaning there is no accessible route and then non-accessible route that able-bodied people can go by. It's just the route. It's just meant to be a site, a space, an experience that everyone can operate in, everyone can use and understand together. We want these spaces to be immersive and intuitive and flexible, meaning you can have a structured class that teaches people about the environment, or it could be a space that's still usable for story time, for a daycare facility, or just somewhere someone wants to walk through with a coffee. But the idea is anyone can access these spaces, anyone can use them for more focused education or just kind of passive, self-guided education of nature and the areas around them. And it's open and accessible to everyone. Everyone is invited, everyone should feel welcome and able to use this space. And those are really going to be the driving kind of goals of this project as we go through design. Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy is leading this effort. We're kind of the overall project manager based on the grant that we received from the Edith L. Trees Foundation to fund this project. The city of Pittsburgh, as well as an advisory committee that we've assembled, which includes city department officials, education professionals, disability advocates, et cetera. They're kind of providing project oversight throughout this process, but we're really the main ones in charge of the project. We've hired Pashak MTR, which is an award-winning landscape architecture firm, and their consultant team of Ethos Collaborative and CAST to help us with the design and really make a compelling, thoughtful, well-designed project that we hope is a success and a unique space in the city of Pittsburgh. Just as an introduction to anyone who isn't familiar with the Parks Conservancy, we are a nonprofit organization. Our mission here is to improve the quality of life for the people of Pittsburgh by restoring the park system to excellence, and in partnership with the city of Pittsburgh and the community. So any projects, the programs, the educational opportunities we offer are conducted with respect for the environment, historic design, and the historic, the rich history of our region, as well as the diverse needs of our region. There's a lot of different people in Pittsburgh, and we want to hear all those voices. And the Frick Environmental Center kind of encapsulates all of those goals. It's a LEED platinum building. It's a living building. It's extremely sustainable, environmentally friendly. There's historic elements on site that have been lovingly preserved and maintained. We offer a lot of educational programming through this building, through this facility, and the site-free educational programming. And it's really intended to let all Pittsburghers engage with and use one of the city's biggest parks. Brief introduction to the project team. We won't go through everyone in depth, but I'm the project lead, Brandon Raleigh. I'm the capital projects manager. Aaron Tobin and Catherine Uninen, who are on this call, are really going to be heading up the community engagement aspects of this project. Jen Schnackenberg, who's our interim director of education, will be offering insight on our team from an educational standpoint, how we program these spaces. And then Ross Chapman is providing oversight. We also have horticulture and forestry staff, education staff, visitor experience staff who will be offering some unique insights into the design of this project. Brief introduction to Pashak MTR. Like I mentioned, they're an award-winning landscape architecture community planning firm. A lot of their work aligns with a lot of the work we do. They have a focus on improving the environment for communities, connecting people with the natural world, with each other, through sustainable and equitable design and planning. They've done a lot of work in public parks, outdoor learning environments, nature-based play spaces, sensory gardens, accessible and sustainable trails, et cetera, inclusive design. So really well qualified to be leading this effort from a design standpoint. So we're very happy to have them on board. And their team includes Karen Rogenkamp, who's kind of overseeing the project on their end. You get to talk to her later. She's on this call. Eric Brightman, who's more of their technical lead. Heather Fuller, who's also on the call as a designer and an accessibility specialist. And Alex Zweigert, who's the design support as well. Just to give you a very quick outline of the timeline. The goal is to wrap this project up by June 23rd or July 23rd. And really we're trying to get to a shovel-ready project, get all the design work done, so then we can ask for funding to get it built. So right now we're in what we call the listening and analyze phase, which is where we're really just trying to understand the site, understand the users and what you all need. After that, between November and February 2023, we'll be creating concepts and we'll come back out to all of you folks for feedback on those concepts to see if we're responding to the needs of the community appropriately. Then we'll refine those concepts to a preferred plan. And then we'll start documenting it. We'll start making construction documents so it can become a buildable project. So all that is to say is there's a lot more opportunity for engagement. This is really early in the process where we're just trying to listen and understand. So we hope to see you all more often throughout this process, because that's how it's going to be a successful project at the end. Moving quickly into the site, what we're talking about. Those of you who might not be familiar with Frick Park, it's the largest regional park in the city. It's located on the East End near Squirrel Hill, Point Breeze, Regent Square. The site itself includes the Frick Environmental Center, but there's also other amenities. There are parking areas and drop-off areas. There's a From Slavery to Freedom Garden, a rainwater fountain, an amphitheater, et cetera. There's already some rich amenities that are here, and the project area we're talking about is located at the east end of the building. That includes about a 3-acre area that encapsulates an informal teaching and learning play space, a nature trail, a paved nature trail that was once ADA compliant, but has since fallen into disrepair, as well as an observation deck. And this area has a lot of different types of nature environments. There's woodland areas, there's understory, there's canopy trees, there's a meadow area to engage with. So there's a lot of sensory opportunity here. There's a lot of learning opportunity here, things we can get people in tune with if we can design it correctly. You know, the informal nature play space, you can see here, just to familiarize yourself with it, there's an area that's kind of encapsulated by logs with some shade that's good for gathering, seating, teaching opportunities. There's a mud kitchen that's a little more open, and some other tables that are good for different types of activities, learning activities, which our educational team programs quite a bit. There are loose logs and sticks that can be used for kids to build forts and whatever structures, but it's, you know, it's imaginative and it's kind of tactile mechanical play, as well as logs and stumps that are used for seating, for exploration, for just informal play and balancing on. So it's a really great play space. It's a really great informal teaching space as well, but it's not accessible. And that's one of the things we want to kind of amplify and address in this project. The nature trail that you can see here that is paved, you know, winds through kind of these large, almost, you know, feels like a cathedral in terms of these large canopy trees in a you know, heavily wooded area. The grade of the trail is pretty much accessible, but the trail surfacing itself no longer is. So upgrading that, providing new sensory experiences, new amenities along that trail will be important. And the observation deck that some of you may or may not be familiar with, but basically it's a large deck space, large gathering space that actually puts you in kind of an elevated experience. You're up in the tree canopy and you're encapsulated by the trees all around it. It's a very unique experience for Frick Park, but also needs upgrades, needs accessibility upgrades. Can we augment that and improve that experience some more? And then just a number of sensory experiences that are there, textures, smells, whether it's mushrooms with the different types of you know, shady forest versus sunny meadow area, tree bark, leaves. There's a lot of different things that we can experience and learn that are here. We don't have to bring them, we don't have to design them, they're already here. It's just a matter of incorporating them in a way that everyone can experience them. And again, just some of the uses that we were kind of talking about that our ed team currently uses that makes this space so flexible, whether it's exploring what's under a log, playing in the mud kitchen for a little more structured play elements, or just playing and bouncing on logs and kids being kids. Those are things that are great, but we want to bring that experience to everyone. So that's the quick run through, because I really did want to spend more time talking, and we can answer more questions in each of the breakout groups. But what we'd like to do now is just, even though we have a small group, we like to break it into 2 breakout groups. And we're going to go in and talk a little bit more and ask you all some questions. Really, one is accessibility and inclusion. We want to understand what inclusivity means to you all based on your own experience. Examples of places that are inclusive and accessible, and challenges that you encounter in places that aren't. We want to understand from an educational perspective, do you engage in these types of learning environments? What are good examples? What are ones that aren't so good? What ideas do you have for the sensory classroom? or a space like this that you would like to see. And then lastly, we want to talk about engagement. Clearly, we got you all here, so we were able to reach you and get you to a meeting, but we want to understand how we can continue to make engagement thoughtful, how we continue to make sure we're reaching to all the voices, all the people we need to talk to throughout this process. Because as you saw in that project schedule, there's a lot of engagement we have to do. So continuing to improve is going to be crucial. So with that, Erin, can you break us out into breakout groups? So we're going to spend about 35 minutes talking about these different things, and then we'll come back and report out and we can have more conversation then.
Yes, give me 1 second, I'm almost there. Okay, this should work. I'm going to open all the rooms. You've been invited to your room. You should be able to join now.
It looks like the other group is still busily talking too.
I will send them a message.
Get back here. Jonathan, I was wondering, so you said you're a ranger in this area of the park. Do you have any particular observations or concerns or tips, lessons learned based on just what you see every day from a general perspective? I know we saw lots and lots of dog walkers and bikes one of the times we were out there.
I'm not specifically assigned to Frick Park per se,
okay.
but we do have rangers there. I do go through there frequently. I would say if more lighting would be great for things like that, for safety, possibly cameras around the area, things like that. Well-lit areas are probably the best, so there isn't anything malicious going on or anything like that. But usually it's safe and it's fine. But those are just some of the suggestions that I would have.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Was part of a conversation earlier, given where the environmental center sits in relative to public transportation, and hopefully going to try to launch something with some Pitt students to look at transportations and barriers to access into parks, the whole system. But is there something that we could think about that informs folks who maybe have not been to the environmental center or who rely on public transportation, which is a half a mile or more away? Is there something that we can do to prompt them or inform them about this space? I mean, that's I know it's outside of the project area, but maybe just something to noodle on, because it'd be really nice to think about that, because we can't necessarily change the bus route and get people and others have transportation by other means, private or other kind of public means, but that's always been something that's seems like it would be great if we could figure out what that could look like by way of just activating that space or in any space.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think we'll have to, maybe we can cross that bridge when understanding what this space becomes, and then understanding what challenges are for people, especially with the general public, to get here. Maybe there's room for that. Maybe a bus route could be rerouted. I think once we dive into this a little more, we can kind of understand what that looks like. All right, it looks like we have everyone back. We've got about 10 minutes. So why don't we do a brief kind of report out of what we heard, and then if we want to have some more conversation, we can. I'll start with kind of the conversation that we had in our group. One of the things we talked about was in terms of what does inclusivity mean to you. I think what was discussed was having a sense of belonging, or having a sense that the space was designed with an understanding of the group you're with, or the accommodations you need, or who you are as a person, and that it was thought of. So you feel welcome and included in that space was important, as well as it being intuitive, that you just kind of know how you can use that space. Those were important aspects of just inclusivity and accessibility that we should continue to strive for. We talked about a lot of the challenges that people experience in these spaces, especially people who might be on the spectrum or have autism, or buzzing lights, neon lights, artificial things tend to be what turns people off. And actually, nature is intuitively, you're more in tuned to it, so it actually has a calming effect. It's so the more natural it can be, the better. We learned about some outdoor spaces that were installed recently, or they're ongoing at the courthouse, that do a really good job of this. So we want to go see what those look like, understand kind of what they've done. And then in terms of kind of educate, kind of folding in with educational opportunities, but also ideas for the sensory classroom, signage is really good, as well as storyboards or something that tells you, that might tell someone who's visiting either a sign at the park or information at the FEC or online, what to expect, you know, what is at the park or what is at the space that we're trying to design, what people can expect, how can they plan for their visit, so that people can come up and kind of know what they're going to do and they're prepared for the space that way. And that also in turn might allow us to not rely on so much signage interior to these sensory classroom spaces themselves. Told people what they can expect, and that allows them to then go and kind of engage with nature and engage with the sensory experiences without as much prompting. So that's kind of a, you know, kind of a nice thought that we're gonna consider. Anything else from our group, Kara, or others that we want to kind of that think is important to share out? All right, Catherine, you want to?
Sorry, one more thing. You might have mentioned this, Brandon, but I think we also heard that meeting ADA requirements in terms of path widths and smoothness and accessible parking, those can be important for all people. Like, for example, wider paths can give you a little bit more room in a crowd and not feel so overwhelmed.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that was another example. Attendee mentioned was, you know, it's great to design an accessible space, but if you don't provide the accessible parking to use it, it's not that accessible. So making sure we're, you know, thinking of all of those things is important.
Yeah, we had some similarities with the inclusivity conversation, but I'm actually going to put Heather, kindly thank you, Heather, for letting me put you on the spot since you were taking notes.
One thing that someone said that was really interesting was when we think of accessibility, that's giving someone access to an opportunity or an area, but inclusivity is equal. You don't have to give access, it's just there for everybody. We also talked about how it's really important to have visibility to the spaces that are accessible. It's one thing to have an accessible element, but knowing how to get there, or maybe if you were to arrive at the visitor center, environmental center, and there would be signals or cues along the way to let you know there are things back there that you can go explore. We also talked about there were a lot of positive comments about Whiteman Park and just in general with accessible bathrooms, not necessarily only being accessible, but also having the ability to change someone who is older than an infant is a big deal. And also having accessible bathrooms in general is a deciding factor for some of these groups on whether or not they're going to take a group to a facility. Someone brought up an urban trail that I believe is at the School for the Blind, and there are buttons you can press along the trail that will say, you know, you're approaching this type of tree, it's this tall, it is this kind of bark, and it kind of gives you all of those visual cues that you can't see. And I think the last really important thing that we talked about was thinking about caregivers with mobility issues. A lot of times these play spaces, we're thinking about the children themselves with disabilities, but sometimes it's the caregiver, and the caregiver wants to interact and play with their kids and experience these same things. And I thought that was an interesting perspective to think about.
Yeah, I'll just add in that we also heard about just thinking about the broad spectrum of ages that might be engaging in the space. So there was an example given of a school that has a sensory garden, but it's really everything is sort of geared towards one height level to some extent. And so thinking about the range of users, and then also I think one final comment in our group was about really letting nature be the star, and thinking about this space maybe less as a built out kind of space, but more of a space that really facilitates and highlights what's the natural areas that are already here.
Very good.
Anything else from our group? Did we miss anything? Thank you, Heather.
That was great. Thank you all for that feedback and participating in this. In terms of next steps, and before we wrap up in a few minutes, we're going to be releasing a public survey, just for kind of the general public to understand how they might interact with spaces like this, how, you know, even not from a accessibility or inclusivity or educational standpoint, like if you're just someone who enjoys Frick Park, how you might use this space. You know, that'll be on the Engage PGH website. Everyone here is obviously welcome to take that survey or send it to people they know. But one thing we started touching on in our conversation, we didn't really get to finish it, is future engagement with either you all or other groups, other advocates that you know that should be included in this conversation. If you have any thoughts of the best way that we can engage other than Zoom meetings or in-person focus groups or online surveys or flyers, you could share that with us so we can make sure we're getting the right people into the conversation at key points in this project throughout the course of this project. That would be extremely appreciated. So if anyone has any thoughts on that now, we'd love to hear them. Also more than welcome to email us later or reach out to us later and have further conversation. We know we're running out of your lunch hour, so want to be respectful of time.
I don't know if you all are in touch with Marcus Schaffner of the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition, but okay, great. Yeah, I figured, I just thought I'd put it out there.
He's coming tomorrow to our other focus
Yeah,
group.
thanks, Marty.
I assumed as much. I just, want to cover my base.
Thank you.
One thing I'll say is that something we've thought about is that, we don't have to just ask people to come to us. We can also make time to go and, if you have parent meetings at your school or there's an opportunity to come and just promote the public survey or talk to people about the project and get feedback in a different way, our staff can be available for something like that. So for those of you that, are affiliated with school, organization, or whatever, that they're, please let us know if there are opportunities like that to come to you. And at a minimum, we do have a bunch of flyers that that have a link to the public survey that's going to be out. So if anyone has a spot to put a flyer, we can certainly get one to you. So, and there's going to be physical temporary signage going up in the actual spaces in Frick Park so that the general public passing by can access the survey and learn about the project as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine. And I'll just add that if anyone wants to continue conversations around this stuff, it doesn't have to just be in a focus group Zoom meeting. I'm happy to have a phone call, meet for coffee. If you want to be involved and participate in this more than just this interaction, then we should do that. So feel free to reach out to myself or Erin, and we'd be happy to hear whatever you have to offer. But with that, it's 1 o'clock. I'll give everyone their afternoon back, but thank you so much, everyone, for attending and providing some really thoughtful feedback. It's going to be extremely useful for us moving forward.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Everyone.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Cool. Brandon, is there anything else you need? Do we need to do immediate follow-up or should we just, I can come find you in the think tank?